Russia hosts the BRICS summit amid rising global tensions. Hello, I'm Anton G, and this is The Heat. The 16th BRICS summit in Kazan is the first meeting of the group after expanding membership in January to Iran, Egypt, Ethiopia, and the United Arab Emirates. Top of the agenda will be security, economy and finance, and cultural and humanitarian ties under the theme of strengthening multilateralism for equitable global development and security. We begin with this report from CGTN's Huang Fei.
Welcome to Kazan, Russia, a city that shares its name with the iconic family center, where couples come to tie the knot. This unique architecture embodies Kazan in Slavic languages, a giant cauldron blending diverse cultures and faiths. It's a fitting backdrop for the BRICS summit, where leaders from founding nations will welcome 5 new members, alongside over 30 countries interested in joining.
BRICS began with the unification of the largest countries by population and territory located in different parts of the world. This allows for a distinct perspective on global processes, fostering constructive dialogue among nations. Countries seeking their place want to engage in a framework where they're heard and understood.
Leaders are expected to address key global issues, from climate change to food security and tech cooperation. A top priority will be financial reforms, including exploring national digital currencies for investments and the potential for a common BRICS currency.
The summit will also test BRICS Pay, a decentralized payment messaging system like SWIFT. This new tool is aimed at boosting trade cooperation while helping member nations reduce their dependence on Western institutions.
Local businessman Daniel Galulin welcomes the move. He manufactures boilers for Russian energy companies, increasingly sourcing parts from China due to Western sanctions.
As a business person, I faced significant challenges earlier this year. While some issues have been resolved, financial hurdles remain, including extra costs for transferring money to China. I hope BRICS will simplify operations and help balance currency differences, because we are currently very dependent on the dollar and the euro.
There will also be special focus on interactions between China's President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin. This is President Xi's 10th visit to Russia as China's leader.
Russia and China always have something to offer each other, including our mutual cultural enrichments and close economic ties. The two countries support each other in a complex international situation. This trust extends from the highest levels down to the grassroots, as people here in Russia are very interested in what is happening in China.
Amid global economic slowdowns and geopolitical divides, China is stepping up as a driver of growth and stability for emerging economies. Beijing remains committed to free trade, strengthening global supply chains, as well as achieving the UN's 2030 climate goals. In the next few days, China will continue to advocate for multilateralism, positioning itself as a stabilizing and positive force in global affairs. Huang Fei, CGTN, Kazan, Russia.
To discuss the BRICS summit and more, let's bring in our guests. Joining us from Shanghai, Victor Ga is chair professor at Soochow University. From Tehran, we're joined by Ali Akbar Dareini. He is a researcher and writer at the Strategic Studies of Public Policy Journal. From Sao Paulo, Gustavo Ribeiro is founder and editor-in-chief of the Brazilian Report. And here in Washington, D.C., Anton Fedyashin is a professor of history at American University. Welcome to all of you. Anton, good to see you. Let me start with you. This will be the largest BRICS summit so far. There's more than 32 countries represented. There'll be 20 heads of state at the gathering in Kazan. Russia, of course, is the host. And if you look at the optics of this, I mean, what does it tell you when countries representing... We have lost Anton. Let me move on to Victor Ga. Victor, the Chinese President Xi Jinping, he will be attending this summit, and also he'll be attending what's known as the BRICS Plus dialogue. Ahead of the gathering, President Vladimir Putin, the host, said, and I'm quoting him here directly, he said, Russia-China cooperation on the international stage is undoubtedly one of the key factors for global strategic stability. So tell us about this relationship and how you see it contributing to global stability.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm right now in Shanghai and looking at this summit meeting of BRICS held in Kazan. First of all, I'm pretty sure it will be a huge success. Part of the reason was that I was in Moscow last month, and I attended one of the preparatory meetings for the BRICS summit in Moscow, and it went off as a great success. So I'm fully convinced that this summit in Russia will be a greater success. Secondly, China and Russia are two very important members of the BRICS organization. Right now we have 10 members, and I'm pretty sure Russia will do a great job as the hosting country. And Russia has been very active over the past 1 year, not only in providing facilities, for example, helps to all the other member states and countries on the waiting list, but also has come up with new ideas, creative ideas as how this BRICS organization should head to. For example, Russia has been very active in promoting the enlargement of the BRICS membership and has been engaged in dialogue and conversation with so many other countries. And I think this is a good thing. Whether, for example, the expansion of BRICS will be as fast as Russia expected, that's a technical issue. And I would say between China and Russia, we both care for the stability of the relations, peace prevailing between the Russian people and the Chinese people. And also we have similar ideas about how these international issues need to be handled. And I would say with China-Russia solidarity, there will be greater and lasting peace on the Eurasian continent to start with and in the world at large. So I think China-Russia cooperation will also be reflected at the summit meeting in Kazan, and we are really waiting for more and more great news coming out of this BRICS summit meeting going forward. I'm sure that the expansion of the BRICS eventually may take this organization from currently 10 to 20, 25, 50, if not even larger. And the joining of BRICS by an important country like Turkey will be, in my best judgment, as a turning point, because Turkey is a NATO member state and it tried to join you for decades, but now is the right time for Turkey to eventually join BRICS.
Right, I want to talk about the prospective membership of Turkey a little later in the show, but let me get back to Anton, who's back with us. Anton, good to see you. As I was saying, this is the largest BRICS gathering so far, more than 32 countries represented, 20 heads of state will be there. This is being held in Russia. And, you know, if you look at the optics of this, what does it tell you when you got representatives of the majority of the world's population now in Russia for this important summit at a time when the West, the United States and its allies mainly, are trying to isolate Russia internationally?
Well, it tells us, first of all, that the isolating of Russia has failed, despite the rhetoric that comes out of the West. It tells us something else, though, that not only is this, in a sense, a negative victory for the Russians in defeating the attempt to isolate them, but there's a very positive aspect to this, a positive victory, because the amount of countries that are lining up to join BRICS tells us that an enormous amount of people on our planet seem to think that the BRICS has something to offer them. As a matter of fact, when you look at the international organizations that exist today, the fastest growing one is BRICS, by far, as a matter of fact. Nothing else even comes close. And when you look at the sheer volume of what BRICS deals with, it's really impressive. I actually just looked at the website today to look at the subcommittees that have been meeting over the past year that the Russians have been chairing it. And the list is truly impressive. You've got foreign policy, statistics, education, justice departments of all the different countries, sports, agriculture, parliamentary forums, geological services, environmental issues, disaster relief, academies of sciences, and so on and so forth, including sports, by the way. This is not only a multilateral organization itself, obviously, but it is also beginning to bring together countries from all of the continents to deal with multiple issues, not necessarily the most important and pressing ones, but also educational, cultural, sports issues. So there's a parallel structure, a parallel forum for countries to discuss their experiences, share their knowledge, and to solve problems that is evolving, because it looks like the Western-led forum, because of the weaponization of currencies and banking systems, unfortunately, it is making itself less and less attractive.
Ali Akbar, Dareini, Iran is one of the newer members of the BRICS group, but it's also one of those states that's embroiled in the conflict in the Middle East right now, the conflict with Israel. What will the Iranian delegation be looking for at this BRICS summit? Would it at least be looking for some kind of diplomatic support from fellow members?
First of all, Iran can claim that the United States and its allies have failed despite their extensive efforts to isolate Iran. They have failed to achieve their goals. Iran can claim that now it is a member of an economic bloc that is going to shape the future of the international system. So this is a very big event for Iran. Also, this is an opportunity for Iran to help promote the idea of an alternative payment system, and since Iran, Russia, and others are sanctioned by the West, sanctioned economies can get relief and open new ways to engage in trade. But the wars in Ukraine, the war in Gaza, and Lebanon, and increasing tensions is making it more expedient for BRICS member states to move away from a unipolar system and move towards a multipolar system. Given the profound moral collapse of the West by supporting Israeli genocide, we see that BRICS has become the desire of a majority of the world population to move away from a US-led order and go towards a multipolar system, and that is being shown by the global South. So this is an important opportunity for Iran to raise these issues and get support for a multipolar system.
Right. All right, let's go to Sao Paulo to Gustavo. Gustavo, the Brazilian president, Lula da Silva, he will not be at this summit in person because of health issues, but he will be attending it virtually. Now, BRICS, of course, or at least Brazil, rather, was one of the original members of BRICS. And if we look at how BRICS has grown over the last few years, the average growth rate for BRICS members is forecast for 4% right now. In the last decade, more than 40% of global GDP growth came from BRICS member states. But for Brazil, what would be the priority at this summit?
Well, like you said, just to give a little bit of detail about Lula's condition, he slipped in the bathroom on Saturday and suffered minor brain hemorrhage. Now, doctors say it is not severe and that he can carry on his work, so that's why he will be represented by Brazil's foreign minister, but will attend the summit remotely. Now, we talked with Brazil's top diplomat for Asian and Pacific affairs, and Brazil's summit's agenda will focus on the key issue of the creation of a new category for BRICS partner countries, associated nations who are not full members. And according to this diplomat, Brazil's stance is to refrain from endorsing specific potential partners and rather trying to create principles for according to which BRICS would or not accept new members or countries in other ways of cooperation. Brazil wants countries to be chosen in accordance to principles of equitable geographical representation. Now, for Lula, it's very important to have more Latin American countries represented in this sort of multilateral body, solid diplomatic ties with existing members, and a commitment to not imposing unilateral sanctions against BRICS countries. Brazil also wants to focus on reforming global governance bodies and reducing emerging countries' dependence on the dollar for trading. Of course, Brazil and China signed in January 2023 an accord to facilitate trading operations in the Chinese currency, with the Chinese central bank nominating an offshore clearing bank in Brazil, and that reduces severely the foreign currency rate risk for companies importing and exporting. And just to finish, that's important because the Brazilian currency this year alone has lost 16% against the dollar. So for Brazilian companies, that reduction of exchange rate risks is massively important.
Right, Gustavo, just one quick question on these principles that you were talking about, these principles for future members of BRICS. I mean, these are almost like conditions that Brazil is setting up for countries that want to join BRICS. Is this something that's going to be presented to the summit?
That's something that Brazil wants to present. Brazil does not want to pick specific parties. Of course, Brazil wants more of Latin America in the BRICS, and it does want to keep a certain level of influence because there's a perception that most of these new countries, they are more interested in being close to China rather to being close to the rest of the original BRICS countries. And that's something that Brazil does not want, to be just one of many. It wants to have a big role in the BRICS.
Victor Gao, there was one major development on the eve of the BRICS summit that was coming from India and China. The two countries have reached an agreement on patrolling their common border, and we know this border has been the source of tensions for the past 4 years. I mean, how significant is this agreement, and could it pave the way for even more cooperation between China and India?
First of all, I think both China and India demonstrated enough courage, wisdom, and vision in reaching this border patrolling agreement. And I think it paved the way for both China and India to attend the summit meeting in Kazan. Both Prime Minister Modi and Chinese President Xi Jinping will be there. And don't be surprised if China and India will have a separate side meeting in Kazan, talking about the bilateral relations. Further, I would say both China and India should have enough wisdom to handle their existing territorial disputes in the western section, eastern section, and a smaller amount of dispute in the middle section. And I think for these two largest populations in the world to be hijacked by the existing territorial disputes will be a shame for both China and India. And I think it's always encouraging to see that the two countries reached a point where they could put the territorial disputes and the intensification over the past 4 or 5 years behind them, at least momentarily, and hold hand of each other to attend this BRICS summit meeting in Kazan. And I'm pretty sure that they will come up with more details and more regulations to make sure that their border disputes no longer flash out into, for example, clashes, even though the clashes themselves are well controlled in the scope because no lethal weapon is allowed by both countries to be used in case of any clashes between the military forces of the two sides. And I think China and India both want to be leaders of the global south, and to have amicable relations between China and India will be absolutely crucial. Further, allow me to make another point. It is true that both China and India have some existing border issues, And there is a big country which is very eager to provoke the two countries, try to support one versus the other. And if the confrontation is intensified, it probably will be happier, etc. But at the same time, there is another big country, Russia, which has consistently, over the past several years, demonstrated an eagerness to urge both China and India to do the right thing and try to promote better understanding between China and India. And I think you can see the sharp difference between the positioning of these two big countries as far as the existing territorial disputes are concerned between China and India. And today, when we have this settlement of these issues, even though on a limited scale, for example, between China and India, it also reflects how different countries position themselves vis-a-vis this important territorial disputes between China and India.
Okay, Anton, you know, as I said, this summit is taking place at a time of rising global tensions. And if you look at the situation, the conflict in Ukraine, Ukraine receives support from the West, support in the form of weapons, in the form of money, in the form of diplomatic support, in the form of intelligence support as well. And then we look at the Middle East, there's overwhelming support from Western nations for Israel. Similarly, in its onslaught in Gaza. Do you expect the summit to address those issues? And what can BRICS do as an organization?
I think, Anand, that these issues will be addressed. Let's wait to see if any kind of specific language makes it into the communique. This will be tricky. BRICS is not positioning itself as a military bloc, certainly not. It is not positioning itself as a peacekeeping or peace enforcement organization, for that matter, but it is positioning itself as a forum. That's exactly what it is. BRICS is so far a fairly decentralized forum, not even an organization. It has no headquarters, it has no permanent staff, and that gives it enormous amounts of flexibility. It is also a forum with an open door policy. So to take open sides would run against its principles. If the Arabic, let's say, states, Middle Eastern states, let's call them, there are more than Arabs who live there, if they want to take a very strongly anti-Israel, let's say, stance, this will put other members of the BRICS and even non-members who are present in Kazan into an awkward situation, including Russia, by the way, which has had very good relations with Israel, although it does not approve of what is going on in Gaza and Lebanon. And the same, I doubt, applies to Ukraine. I doubt the Russians will force all of the guests, including the official members of BRICS, to really make any open and one-sided statements against Ukraine or NATO or any such thing. That's not the point of the BRICS. I think what we're going to hear are calls for diplomatic solutions to all of these crises, but anyone who is waiting for some kind of binary decision to be made is going to be waiting for a long time and misunderstands the nature of this forum.
Right. Ali Akbar, Dareini, you were telling us a moment ago about the sanctions that Iran faces. I mean, Iran faces some of the toughest sanctions ever imposed on a single country. And I'm wondering, now that it's a member of BRICS, and as I pointed out earlier on, BRICS plays an important role in global economic growth. Does this membership ease that burden for Iran? Can it break through those sanctions by membership in BRICS?
Definitely, yes. BRICS is seeking to introduce an alternative system to replace the SWIFT system, an alternative payment system that allows BRICS member states to conduct their transactions independent of the Western system. So that allows Iran to conduct its trade immune from Western sanctions. That is something that Iran welcomes greatly. So from Iran's point of view, BRICS shows that the geopolitical center of gravity is moving towards the global south. And given that Iran and Russia are subject to draconian sanctions. There is a great desire within BRICS, especially key members like Russia, Iran, and China, to reduce reliance on the Western payment systems. But in just one more point, in the Kazan summit, Iran and Russia are going to finalize a strategic partnership agreement. Although President Pezeshkian will travel to Moscow later, and they will sign the final document during a bilateral meeting.
Okay, Gustavo, I've just got a few minutes left, and of course there will be a big focus on BRICS, on economic and trade relations. One crucial component in this is the new development bank. The former Brazilian president, Dilma Rousseff, she is president of that bank. It's financed almost 100 projects. And now there's an effort, as we just heard earlier on, there's an effort to settle trade between BRICS members through another means, not using the United States dollar. There's been talk of the digital settlement of two-way trade. How significant is that?
Well, that is huge and to stay focused on Latin American economies. Like I said before, we have very volatile currencies. The Brazilian real alone has lost 16% against the dollar this year. We have seen multiple currencies here losing ground. So for companies that are trading and sometimes have to make projections based on currency, foreign exchange rates, if those rates change dramatically, which has happened in recent years, that can lead to big financial woes. So to trade in another currency, it would be a game changer.
Okay, Anton Fedyashin, I've got just a minute left, and I want to address something that Victor raised earlier on. That is the prospective membership of Turkey in BRICS. In fact, the Speaker of the Turkish Parliament said membership in BRICS demonstrates Turkey's multilateral foreign policy. But what kind of message is that going to send to the world, particularly the United States? We have to remember that Turkey is a member of NATO. In fact, it hosts United States military bases. And of course, BRICS is not a competitor. It's not a military organization. But still, what's the message?
The message is that the Turks are disappointed with the way that they've been treated by the EU, that they've been trying to get into for a long time. They are not happy with some aspects of American foreign policy in the Middle East, and that they are willing to pursue a multi-vector foreign policy where they do not put all of their geopolitical eggs into one basket, but they basically become friends with everyone. But please remember that the United States is a very distant power as far as the Turks are concerned, but they have to live with the Middle East and with the Russians. That's their neighborhood. The Erdogan is the consummate geopolitical dribbler, and I think he will use this threat to facilitate his way into the EU if that works.
Okay, I'm afraid I'm going to have to interrupt you there, Anton. We've run out of time. Thanks to all of you for being with us. That's it for this edition of The Heat. I'm Anand Naidu in Washington, D.C.